What is your religion?
C.V.
Take the book in your right hand and read aloud the words on the card.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
What is your full name?
Archibald Havelock Sumner.
And where do you live?
Old place near Thurso.
Were you at one time married to Sarah Elizabeth Sumner?
Yes, I was.
And do you and she have a daughter, Fiona Sarah Sumner?
Yes, though I have never seen her.
And did you, in September, receive a telephone call from Fiona?
From a girl who said she was my daughter, Fiona, yes. And I have no reason to doubt that it was she.
And can you remember when that call was?
Yes, it was in the morning of Monday, the 10th of September.
Did any conversation take place?
Yes. She said, "This is your daughter, Fiona, speaking." I said, "I haven't got a daughter. You must have the wrong Sumner." A pun. She said, "Please, would you let me come and see you?" I said there would be no purpose.
And then what happened?
I heard a man's voice say, "We must get back to Fulchester." I put the telephone down and started to barricade myself in. As her mother's daughter, I knew I was in for trouble. And I was right.
Yes, thank you.
Well, can I go now?
No, I'm afraid not.
Mr. Sumner, you and your wife parted with some bitterness.
That, my dear sir, is the understatement of the century. No doubt she will have told you that I did certain things which, quote, "no one could ever forgive," unquote. But there is another side to the story which I have no intention of relating and which I do not care to think about. It's over. It's buried. But unfortunately, spectres, gorgons and vampires don't always remain in their graves.
Yes, I can assure you, Mr. Sumner, I wasn't prying for details. Now, just tell me this. Does your bitterness extend towards your daughter?
I have never met my daughter. I have no animosity towards her. I wish her well. After 15 years in the company of her mother, she probably needs all the help she can get. But I have no wish to meet her.
No, she's not getting any help from you.
No, I pay their maintenance, and I shall go on paying it. But that is all.
Have you remarried?
No, once is enough.
Did you come here voluntarily?
I did not. I was subpoenaed.
Yes, I see. Thank you.
I have no re-examination.
Very well, you may leave the witness box.
Well, may I go now, sir?
No! I think you should remain. You go and sit down. Find a seat in court.
That concludes the case for the defence, my lord.
Mr. Lloyd?
Members of the jury, abduction consists of taking a girl under 16 from the possession of her parents or guardian. Now, usually force is connected with abduction, but the offence of abduction can be committed without the use of force. If a man persuades a girl to go away with him without the consent of her parents, then he is guilty of abduction. Now, you will have noted that there are two charges in this case. Firstly, that on the 9th of September 1973, the accused abducted Fiona Sumner by persuading her to go away with him without the consent of her mother. And that secondly, that between the 2nd and the 9th of September 1973, the accused attempted to abduct Fiona Sumner. Now, as to the first charge, do you really believe that McDowell used no persuasion? McDowell had obviously formed a close relationship with Fiona. He enjoyed her company. He apparently wanted some company on this trip. He'd even asked his own daughter, with whom he had no special relationship, to go with him. Now, can you believe that he didn't suggest that Fiona should go with him, holding out for her a possible meeting with her father as bait? Now, McDowell has also told us that he believed Fiona's mother knew of the trip. I'm sure you'll find that incredible. A 14-year-old girl who should have been at school tells him that her mother agrees to her going away with him, a 40-year-old married man, and he believes that instantly, without any attempt to communicate with Mrs. Sumner. It's pure nonsense. Now, the second charge is more subtle. The basis of it is that his real intention was to take Fiona not just to John O'Groats, but to the west coast of Scotland or elsewhere. Now, as to this charge, McDowell denies he attempted to persuade Fiona to go to the west coast of Scotland. But the fact remains, he did go there. He had withdrawn £250 from his bank account, and he has admitted in this court that he planned not to return. So what was he going to do with Fiona? Abandon her 500 miles from home? Now, members of the jury, you may feel tempted to feel sympathy for McDowell's attempt to once in his life do something adventurous, as he put it. And indeed, if it had only concerned his life, one could perhaps sympathise. But Philip McDowell took a 14-year-old girl away from school, causing her mother immeasurable distress, causing the police to mount a massive search operation. He withdrew from his own family, the only means of support they had, causing his wife to leave him and the family to split up. He lied about a meeting with his boss, Mr. Gerard, causing Mr. Gerard's honesty to be subjected to a grueling cross-examination, and he repeatedly lied to the police, necessitating them to process film and analyse tapes to get at the truth. I put it to you that they are not the actions of an innocent man. I must ask you to find him guilty on both counts.
My lord, members of the jury, this case is all about persuasion. Who persuaded who? Now, my client says that it was Fiona Sumner who did the persuading. Now, is that incredible, as my friend points out? She is 14, but she is a remarkably self-possessed and, you might even think, experienced young lady. When you remember that there is medical evidence to show that before this journey occurred, she was no longer Virgo intacta, as the prosecution has pointed out. Now, she had been brought up without a father. She believed him dead. She was curious about him, but her mother was reluctant to talk about him. And suddenly she finds a clue that he is alive and in Scotland. She knows my client is thinking of doing a speed trial to Scotland, and so she seizes on the chance and canvasses the idea that they might go together. Now, is that incredible? Is it incredible that, as he's reluctant, she should try to persuade him? On the contrary, it is obvious that that is what happened. It is exactly what my client told his own daughter, Alison, before ever going on the trip. Then it is said that he couldn't have believed that Mrs. Sumner had given her assent. Well, why not? He didn't know Mrs. Sumner. Fiona, as I say, appeared to be self-possessed and self-directed. She came and went freely from his garage. How was he to know Mrs. Sumner was the possessive, protective type? She might well have been a free and easy mother who let her child do just what she liked. Now, on the second count, it is said that my client, in John O'Groats, tried to persuade Fiona to go with him to the West Coast. Now, he denies that, and his denial is corroborated by evidence of Archibald Sumner, the girl's father. It is said that my client has lied. Well, so he has. People who have lost their bearings, who are all at sea, sometimes do tell lies. But that doesn't mean to say that everything he said is a lie. Is it not just as likely that Fiona is lying in her distress and disappointment, blaming him for everything that's gone wrong? Remember my client's version of what she said when she was turned away from her father's door? She wished he'd never brought her there. She wished she'd stayed at home. It was all his fault. She'd never have known her father was alive if it wasn't for him. Now, if you remember those words and consider Fiona's evidence in the light of them, then, members of the jury, I think your verdict is plain. Not guilty on both counts.
Thank you, Mr. Golding. Members of the jury, my task is to direct you as to the law, as to what constitutes this offence of abduction. It is for you to decide whether, on the evidence, the accused, Philip McDowell, did commit this offence. As Mr. Lloyd has pointed out, abduction can be committed without force. The essence of the offence is the removing of a girl under 16 from the custody of her parent or guardian, in this case, Mrs. Sumner, who was the legal custodian of Fiona. The removal can be accomplished by force or by persuasion. Now, if a person persuades a girl under 16 to leave the custody of her parent or guardian without their consent, that is abduction. Now, the question you have to decide is, did the accused, Philip McDowell, persuade Fiona to go with him to John O'Groats? If he did not, if she was determined to go, if she insisted on going with him and he merely acquiesced, then you need inquire no further into the first offence. But if he did persuade her to go, then you must find him guilty, unless you accept that he believed that Mrs. Sumner consented to Fiona going with him. Now, his belief in her consent would be a defence, even though we know, in fact, she did not consent. The second count is one of attempted abduction, in that, in John O'Groats, the accused tried to persuade Fiona to go on with him to the west coast of Scotland. Now, the accused does not pretend that Mrs. Sumner's supposed consent extended beyond the original trip to John O'Groats, but he does insist that he did not ask Fiona to go on with him to the west coast of Scotland. If he did, if you think that all that went before was part of some preconceived plan to get her away from her mother so that he could make this further suggestion, then you will find him guilty of attempted abduction. If you think there was no preconceived plan, then you will find him not guilty. So there you have it. On the one hand, it is said that the man was the persuader. On the other hand, that it was the girl. Now remember, you must be satisfied beyond all reasonable doubt that the accused, Philip MacDowell, did what is alleged before you can find him guilty. Members of the jury, will you now please retire and consider your verdicts?
Members of the jury, will your foreman please stand? Just answer this question, yes or no. Have you reached verdicts on which you're all agreed?
Yes.
On the first count of abduction on the 9th of September 1973 at Fulchester, do you find the accused guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
On the second count of attempted abduction between the 2nd and 9th of September 1973, do you find the accused guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Very well, MacDowell. You are free to leave the court. I hope you learned something from this trial. It's always sad to see a family break up. I hope you can do something to prevent it.
Yes, my lord.
All stand.
Next week, a chance for you to join another jury in assessing the facts when our cameras return to watch a leading case in the Crown Court.